Right, good afternoon. It's taken 3 years to get here. For the simple reason is I've got 5 kids, and this always falls on school holidays. So you have to, as a chef, you have to learn to juggle. My story starts, I was 15 and I was really bad at school, and I've just started to write a book, and we've started it. It's taken me 3 years so far to get to the point of next year it'll be published. And you look back at your story and you look at where you've come from and you look at how the restaurant's grown. And I started as 15 as a very young cook. I left school because I was useless at school, and I went into a kitchen, and then when I went to college, all the other kids were working in restaurants and I was working in a university just knocking out 1,000 meals a day. And they knew how to fillet fish and I didn't. So I went home one day and I said to my dad, Dad, you know, I want to be good at this. So I wrote to all the hotels locally, and I was very lucky that I picked up a position with a chef, and there was just 4 of us in the kitchen and no kitchen porter, and we grafted all the time. And this guy had worked in some Michelin-starred restaurants in London, and he came in one day after 2 years of being there, and he said to me, Daniel, these are the 2 jobs that you need to go for. And one was with Burton Race, and one with another chef called David Cavalier. So I wrote to them both. Back in that time, it wasn't like it is now. People used to cut their left arm off to get into a restaurant like that. And there was waiting lists. Now it's really difficult, and we're struggling for staff. So my journey went on, and I worked with David Cavalier, and then I went to Yorkshire and I worked with Marco. And then I went down to a place called... I went down to a place called Limpington with a guy called Toby Hill. And then from there I went to Harrogate with a guy called Simon Greller. And then I went back to Marco, and I thought to myself when I was working for Marco, everyone was cooking Marco's food in England, so I decided to take a trip to France. I was 21, I couldn't speak any French. I was dating a French girl, which made it a bit easier. And I wrote 68 letters to all the 2- and 3-star restaurants in France, and I got all these responses back, and people asked me to pay them to go and work there, and I was like, this is fucking mad. And so I got to a 2-star in Tours in Loire Valley, and I remember I walked into the kitchen, and the head chef was away, and the senior sous chef took me into the kitchen, and I couldn't speak a word of French, and I was so nervous. I stood at the reception, and I couldn't even get my words out. Then I went into the kitchen, and 2 days later, the head chef, he came back, and he realized that I wasn't a stagiaire, I was actually there to work. And I stayed there for 9 months, and what I learned in France was, because I couldn't speak the language, I could learn so much more with my eyes and listening. And I was the only chef to stand behind and polish the copper pans, and I used to stand in the pastry and just watch the pastry chef. And for 9 months, all the main kitchen would go home, and I would stand there, and the pastry chef would look at me like I was mad. But every day I learned something more, and in the end, I was dressing the desserts, and I felt really proud. Anyway, I got an opportunity to go back to England, and I opened a restaurant with Simon Greller called Raskas in Leeds, and we got our 1st star in our 1st year. We got 4 rosettes, and it was the best restaurant in the Good Food Guide of that year. And to be honest with you, we went through 197 staff in the 1st year. This place was a zoo. And it was back in the day when the kitchen abuse was at its best. Marco was on form, and to be honest with you, I look back on them days with great horror and great surprise that we kept any staff at all. But for me, it was a drug, and it was addictive that I could take the shit, and it's wrong. It's totally wrong. And then I got the opportunity to open Midsummer House at 25. And being as stupid as I am, I moved my wife there. The day that we opened the restaurant, my wife told me she was pregnant, so she had to stop work and look after the kids. We couldn't sell the house in Leeds, so I was living in a converted garage. It was just all going wrong. It's like the story of my life, really. And then from there, I fell in love with Cambridge. I was 25. There was 4 of us in the kitchen, 3 of us out the front. And I had this beautiful restaurant. And it sits on the River Cam, and I'd taken it over from a chef, and the place had been condemned before I got there. So we had to clean the kitchen, we had to sort the whole restaurant out. And my business partner phoned me, and he said to me, Daniel, we've you've got 6 months to make this work, otherwise we're going to have to close it. And I said, well, I've just moved my whole family here, and my wife's just told me she's pregnant. And I'm really lucky because my dad's an engineer and my brother's a builder. And so I was phoning them every day, asking them how to tile the kitchen and how to do the electrics and how to do this and how to do that. And I've always had this burning anxiety to be as good as the people that I've worked with and worked for. And I've pushed and I've pushed and I've pushed. And Cambridge had never had a Michelin star. And then, I don't know where we are. That's the first dish that I put on the menu. Look at that. Look at that. I'll be honest with you, that's 20 years ago, yeah? That was fucking good for then, I'll be honest with you. I was 25. If you knew how many boys cried about that dish, you'd be under... Anyway, so this restaurant, as you can see, the walls was made of... we had material walls, it's a little conservatory, we had this tiny little kitchen, and there was 4 of us. And... once again, I was pushing. And the first 3 years, I didn't make any money at all. I'd had 2 children by this point, and I remember the first year we made $3.5 grand. And I said to my business partner, I said, I really need a Paco jet. And they just started to come into the UK. And we used to have one of these little horrible Robo-Coupe ones that went round and jammed every time. The pastry chef was trying to make 5 ice creams a day. It was just an absolute nightmare. And I went home and I said to my wife, she said to me, Daniel, we need to change the front window. It's rotten. I said, no, sweetheart, I've just bought a Paco jet. And she sort of, now I understand why she didn't stay with me, really, because I think the restaurant's always been my first love, and it's wrong to say that. And I think what I wanted to talk about today was change. Because I realised that I've taken a journey of... I started a restaurant too young. I wasn't experienced enough. I did a lot of travelling in my younger years. I still travel today. I get my influences from everywhere. But that's how the restaurant looks when I first started. As you can see, it's proper old school. And this is what the story is, really, is I'm writing a book and I'm looking at how my life's changed. And I've said to everybody that's ever worked for me that I hate change. And it's the one thing that I will always harp on about. But what I've realised writing the book, that my life has changed so much. And realistically, learning to speak and to be polite to my staff and supporting them and explaining to them that the journey that I've taken is not, maybe it's not the correct one. So this is how the restaurant looked in... it's there, I'm looking up there. This is how the restaurant looked in 98 when we first took it over. That's how it looked when I first got my first star. I remember the day really clearly that my best mate Tim had phoned me and he said to me, have you phoned Michelin? This was the day when it came out in January, and for me they were the best times. Got the first star. I was absolutely blown away. Closed the restaurant for the night. We all went out on the piss, a bit like last night. And celebrated, had a great time. And then it hit me, the shock of what 1-star Michelin meant. And I wasn't ready for it. And it really, really shocked me. And it also took me to a point where, it took me to a place where I wasn't a very nice person. And I'll openly admit that. And the pressure of the Michelin and the pressure of the restaurant getting busier, and it wasn't that small little restaurant anymore. Suddenly we were getting 7 to 8 chefs in the kitchen, and we needed it. And then, oh no, that's round the wrong way. That's how it looked when we got the first star. That's how the one before that is when we looked at. And then 2 years later, Derek Bulmer phoned me, and he said to me, I remember it very clearly, he phoned me on a Tuesday, and the guide was out on the Friday, and my receptionist came down to me and said, Chef, Derek Bulmer's on the phone. And obviously that fear of losing the star, and I took the phone outside, and I remember thinking, fucking hell. And he was on the phone, and that phone call felt like it was 10 minutes long, and he said, oh, we haven't met, and all of this. And then he said to me, well, we normally phone people that's been promoted in the Michelin Guide. And I couldn't believe it. and he said to me, we promoted you to 2 stars. This was within 2 years of getting the first. And I look back on them days, and I think that's when I became proper terrible. And I'm not proud of it. I've produced some amazing chefs in my kitchen. 7 of them have gone off and got their own stars. I think my children have changed. That's how the restaurant looks now. I like it now. Teresa, that's my designer there. She does all my work. If anyone wants a restaurant to look amazing, she's the lady for it. She does come to Ireland. So that 2nd star was really inspirational. This is the scallops dish. This is a dish that's been on the menu since day one. That's how it looked when I opened. Then it went to that when we got 1 star. And that's how it is now when we've got 2 stars. And it's amazing that it's the same ingredients, it's the same journey. And I talk about that I don't like change. But realistically, change has got me where I am today. I'm really proud of my team. I think having children, and I've got 5 girls. This is the first flood. This is in 2000. And the flood flooded the restaurant. I lost £180,000 in stock. The restaurant wasn't making any money. And 6 weeks we turned it around. But then, this is, fuck knows what that is. We need that one there, Chief, with the, it's not me, look. Yep. This is the next disaster. This is, I put a glass canapé. I thought this was amazing. I've been to the Fat Duck and they had these beautiful glass things, and I thought, oh yeah, we'll get a glass canapé outside the restaurant. It stood there for like 4 hours and I ripped it down myself. I'll be honest, I absolutely hated it. But it's one of those brain ideas. You make a bit of money and then you think, right, this is a great idea. And then this happened. This is, because we're so close to Huntington Sciences, this is where the ALF came, and they were outside the restaurant. I'm running out of time. They were outside the restaurant for 6 months, and I used to take them cups of tea because they were out there protesting about foie gras, and I thought, this is fun. We took a cup of tea, and that was my sense of humour. And then one night they put a brick through the window, and then the next Sunday I woke up and they'd spray painted every window. And it just makes you stand back and think. And that was life-changing for me, because that made me think that it's not all about top ingredients, it's about using simple things as well. A mackerel is just as good as a langoustine. A cockle is just as nice as an oyster. And this is another dish. This is the veal kidney dish that we had when we had 1 star. That's how it changed. Exactly the same ingredients, just a different mindset, just a different way of thinking. That's the veal kidney dish. That's the dish that I'm most proud of. That's my kitchen now. I'll be honest with you, we've grown from having 4 in the kitchen, there's now 13 of us. I think, I'm running out of time. I didn't think I'd have 5 minutes to say, actually. But I think, to be honest with you, my feelings is that it's our job to nurture and to bring the future on. I think I've had an amazing past, but I've also had an amazing future. The future is making chefs better than me, and that's the idea that I've got to put forward. I've got some amazing people working for me, and they are future talents, and I believe that we're all talented in this room, and it's just about working together and not against each other. Thank you very much.